The Influencer's Edge is brought to you by the Rapid Sales Accelerator. If you're ready to skyrocket your sales by 30% or more in just 90 days, then you need to claim your free training right now. You'll learn 4 words that will compel your prospects to trust you like they were children within the first 3 to 5 minutes of any conversation across any platform and any medium. You'll learn how to give your prospects objection amnesia, to crush objections like, I need to talk to my spouse, or I need more time to think it over, or it's too expensive. If you'd like to claim your free training now, go to www.paulrossbook.com. Do it before your competition does it now. Welcome to the Influencer's Edge. This is the place where you come to get the latest breakthroughs, cutting-edge insights, tools, and techniques to leapfrog over the pack in sales, persuasion, and influence. Be sure you visit our website at www.theinfluencersedge.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now sit back, tune in, and enjoy today's episode. Okay, we're already having a bit of fun, my guest and I. Welcome back to the Influencer's Edge. I'm so thankful and grateful to you, my audience, that we are now ranked in the top 10% of podcasts globally. How the frack and effity FF we did that, I don't know. But thank each and every one of you for being such loyal listeners and for doing whatever you're doing and doing whatever I'm doing and my great guests. So I'm, that news just blew my mind.
Congrats, Paul. That's amazing.
My guest today is Brent Adamson. And Brent, we had a green room conversation beforehand. Brent says some things that so align with what I believe in. And he's just a genius. So welcome to the show, Brent.
Thank you, Paul. It's good to be with you. I'm many things, as my wife will remind me, but genius is not one of them. But I'm so happy to be here. It's great to be here.
It's good to have.
By the way, can I just say, congrats on the rating. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment, and beyond sort of what it speaks to your skill as an interviewer and a facilitator, all that. The other thing it really speaks to, something I try to imbue in my children and probably always fail, but is consistency, just showing up and doing the work. Podcasts are so hard to get past about episode 12 to 24, somewhere in there. They all seem to kind of wither on the vine. And the fact that you're still just cranking them out, I mean, it's a testament to a lot of discipline and a lot of hard work. So
and what I'll tell you just transparently, I want to dive into what you do.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't think I'd be any good at it. I really didn't. I've been a guest. No, I'm serious. I've been a guest on interviews for 30 years. I never thought of you. Let's jump to you. I'm going to speed through biography because biographies are usually bullshit. Okay, so Brent is a world-renowned researcher, author, presenter, trainer, and advisor to business commercial executives around the world. You are known as having the biggest crystal ball in business-to-business sales. Brent is the co-author of the best-selling, industry-changing The Challenger Sale and The Challenger Customer. Is that right?
Yeah, so those
He's
are
also
2 books.
a frequent contributor to well-known business publications, including the Harvard Business Review, blah, 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 blah. I don't think anyone cares beyond that. Let's get into it. So I want to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart.
Okay.
Which is this idea that customers don't have confidence in their own ability to make good decisions. I'd like you to put that into your own words and your own terms. And I'd like you to talk about the 4 factors that get in the way of that customer confidence.
Okay. Sure. And and by the way, we can narrow in or we can go super broad. We can go high altitude or real deep in the weeds. So I'll just go, Paul, wherever you want to go with this. But so taking the bio, irrespective of the bio, and putting it aside, just for a little bit of background for your audience, what I am is, I guess, for lack of better words, I'm a researcher. So I have 35, a long career of researching things. I used to be an academic. My PhD's in linguistics and German of all things. But about just over 20 years ago, I joined a company called the Corporate Executive Board, or CEB, which eventually about 6 years ago got acquired by Gartner. But during that time at CEB, I was in the sales and marketing practice, and we did just huge amounts of research on business to business selling and marketing, and published that work in all those different books and things like the Challenger Sale and articles and all that kind of stuff. So I come at this. So I mentioned that for two reasons. One is everything I'm about to say comes from a research based perspective as opposed to a lived. I mean, I've lived through a lot of this, and I'm out and involved in sales in all sorts of different ways. But there's bar charts. In case anyone wants to talk about bar charts, I'm your guy. And then two, and more importantly, perhaps for your audience, is that at least from a data perspective, the data all draws from the context of a business to business or enterprise sale, where you've got groups of people making large, complex decisions on behalf of their company of 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8-figure deals, multi-million-dollar deals. A lot of what we can talk about, I think it's really interesting to extrapolate from what we found down into sort of the business to consumer, small business. I think the lessons there are pretty strong, but I don't have the bar charts per se. So
we don't want bar charts. Bar charts make my eyes cross. Get to the concept.
Oh, that's so sad. All right. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm a storyteller more than anything else. So I'm
Great.
And dad jokes. But okay. So all of that just is a little bit of context for what everyone's about to hear. But as part of all that research that we've done, CB Gartner, and now I'm independent now, but that we've done has led to a couple of really interesting findings. The first finding that I think is really critical for us to understand, at least in business to business, is that when we study the drivers of what we call a high quality, low regret sale, that is the things that need to happen either on the sales side or on the buying side and the market side, whatever, something has to happen inside one of these deals in order to increase the likelihood of the customers buying not something small, but something big, something broad, something with a broader scope, higher margins, higher price point, and also feel better about it at the same time. So we call that a high quality, low regret deal. It's kind of like a unicorn, right? And over the years, we built out research models. We've run all sorts of things through this analysis, trying to understand what are the things that needs to happen to increase the likelihood of that happening. And of all the things, Paul, that came out, I'll skip to the punchline now. By far, and I know it's not a technical term, but by far, orders of magnitude, by far, the single biggest driver of the likelihood of a high quality, low regret deal is the degree that the customers themselves report a high level of what we call decision confidence, or confidence in their ability to make a good decision on behalf of their company. And it stands to reason in a lot of ways. It feels very logical, doesn't it? Which is, if I don't feel good about this multi-million-dollar decision we're going to make on behalf of our company, my job's on the line, it's like things can go cattywampus in all sorts of ways. Right. We're just going to choose not to choose. Now, let me take a pause there. That goes in a really interesting direction here in a second, but let me just take a breath there, because that's where the original sort of confidence thing came from, was just a huge amount of data that said, if you're going to solve for one thing and one thing only in sales, it's solve for customers' degree of confidence in the purchase decision.
Yeah, I agree. So what are the 4 things to get in the way of that?
All right. Okay. So we'll get there just a second, but there's one more really interesting. Let me take you on a left turn, if I may, real quick.
Sure.
Because when I share what I just shared with you, it kind of felt like, well, that was the most anticlimactic thing I've heard, right? It felt like kind of a no-duh moment, right? In fact, when I work, just like you do, I'm on the road, I'm on, online, I'm traveling all over the world, presenting this stuff to big and small companies. There's this moment right about here where CEOs, chief revenue officers, heads of marketing, whatever, senior executives, they'll see this, they'll have this kind of no-duh moment. So, Brent, of course, that's why we're so focused on building customers' confidence. That's why we want to be a thought leader. That's why we want to be a trusted advisor. That's why we want to have the world-class brand, right? So that customers trust us, so they're confident in us, and so they'll buy from us. And that's where this thing takes this weird left turn, because when you unpack this idea of customer confidence and look at it, sort of the elements that make it up, what you find actually, Paul, is really interesting is things like, how confident are we as a buying group that we even ask the right questions? How confident are we that we've thoroughly, researched the question? How confident are we that we're even aligned on what we're supposed to be doing in the first place? The punchline being, when you look at all the drivers of this kind of confidence, it turns out it's not customers' confidence in you that matters. It's customers' confidence in themselves that matters. And I think that's the big miss. That's the big sort of reframe. So we've just finished the new manuscript. This is all becoming a book. It'll be out in the fall. And I think the really interesting big opportunity for all of us is not to solve for confidence per se, but rather, what does it look like when we engage our customers in such a way that we're not solving for their confidence in us, but we're solving for their confidence in themselves? And I think it takes a lot of what we've traditionally done in sales and flips it on its head 180 degrees.
I love it. This is exactly how I think about it as well. So what are the elements of what gets in the way of that? And
I've made you ask 3 times now. I'm so sorry. So now we'll get there. So, right, because this matters. I think particularly right now, because there's a number of forces undermining that confidence, right? Confidence, customers' confidence in themselves is, I think, well, it's not at risk. It's under attack is a little dramatic, but you get the
There's a
idea.
new one, by the way. As
Yeah,
this is being recorded is December, I think, 16th,
17. Yeah, 17.
17th,
Hmm.
2024. We
Yeah.
have drones flying everywhere. We have all these
Well,
UFOs and people are don't know
well,
what the hell is going on. It's
Well,
fear.
so that's not something we talk about in the book per se, except for a little bit the introduction, which just got cut by the editor. But there is all of these decisions that are happening inside a business context, and the four forces, which you've now asked three, and I'm going to make you ask a fourth time apparently, but I will get to them. But all of this is happening in this broader context of just the world we live in today, right? Of the political polarization, of drones, of war, of ships getting stuck in the Suez Canal, which is now a while ago. But I mean, the world changes on a dime dramatically. And in that, I mean, it's hard for me to get up out of bed every morning, just make decisions on behalf of my family. And then to go to work and make multi-million-dollar decisions on behalf of the company is hard. All right. But inside of that, these four forces, which let's get to them. So there's at least four. There's probably more, but the four that we address in the book are these. First of all, is decision complexity. Which is what we find in even some mid-size businesses is the number of people involved in a typical B2B purchase today has tripled, quadrupled. There's all sorts of data. The last data that we had at Gartner before I left was about, on average, about 11 people involved in a typical B2B purchase. I've talked to companies where they've said they've done deals with, not only have they done deals, Paul, with 20, 30 people involved on the customer side, but more importantly, those 20 to 30 people, I just talked to a president of a company just last week who said they'd never made a decision together before. So in other words, it's not just that there were a lot of them. They didn't know how to go through the process of collectively making a decision. And here's this company trying to sell into that. Good luck, right? So decision complexity. Number two is information overload. So as a result of, I joke and I don't joke, about somewhere around 2013, 2014, I think every CEO in the world woke up, looked in the mirror and said, I know how we're going to stand out. I know how we're going to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. We're going to become, wait for it, a thought leader, right?
Oh,
And
I
if we,
hate that fucking
right?
term.
Well, that's just
What a
right. Like,
trope. What a
if we can
trite
all
trope.
be a thought leader, then we're going to demonstrate to our customers that we can have cutting edge solutions that are toughest problems. And right around that time, no offense to HubSpot, but all of a sudden here comes marketing automation. Hey, we got technology for that. And here come marketers and say, we've got a strategy for that. We'll call it content marketing. And we all began to just spam the world with smart stuff. And I call it the smartness arms race. And we're all going to stand out by being smarter than everyone else. And
Wait,
we all,
pause.
yeah,
I
right.
told
And
you.
it wound up in a tie.
Pause,
We're all smart. Yeah, I'm
pause,
done. Go ahead,
pause.
Brad.
No. Gold nugget. Gold nugget.
Yeah.
I tell my guests, ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah.
for those who don't know, my process is I tell my guests in the pre green room, pre-show green room
Yeah.
that if they drop a gold nugget, I'm gonna literally hit an imaginary pause button. Say that again.
Yeah. So again, there's a longer, broader history here that
But you
I'm trying to
used a
pick.
term. You dropped a term that's brilliant.
I called it the smartness arms race. I don't know if that's the term you're looking for,
The
but
smart arms race?
the smartness arms race.
Smartness arms race.
We're all trying to be the world's smartest company. We're all trying to appear smarter in the eyes of our customers than everyone else. And the way we're going to do that is publish more content than you can possibly imagine, right? And that's how we're going to stand out. And yet we've all played the same card in the same way. And we've all bought the same technology to run the same marketing strategy. And we've bombarded the world with infographics and now videos and, TikToks, and less so in B2B, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
And so now, and as I joke now, but I don't joke, is the smartness arms race. You fast forward to today in 2024, 2025, the smartness arms race has ended in a tie. And the only one to lose is your customer because they're overwhelmed. Right? If you try to now just take anything like, I mean, particularly, can you imagine, Paul, as consumers, it's hard enough, but can you imagine trying to make a decision on behalf of your company about anything involving AI right now? I mean, so what do? You go online and say, let me just do a little quick research on AI.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, good luck. It's so overwhelming because everyone's got an opinion. And at some point you say, you know what? I better look at this a little later. It's going to take more time than I thought. And all of a sudden that deal is kind of put on hold because everyone's like, yikes, that's too much. And we've only gotten to the second of the four challenges you've asked about. So decision complexity, information overload. The third one is what I would call objective misalignment. So as all of these different people get involved in a purchase process, to the degree that they're not aligned on, not on what to buy, but they're not always aligned on what they're even trying to do in the first place, or let alone what the problem is that they need to solve
For
for
sure.
first, right?
For sure.
And
That's
this
such
is
a good point.
where there's a real takedown in the book of the value selling approach, and in some ways it's a little unfair because I think selling on your value is a great idea. However, what I see happen again and again and again is companies will convince customers of their value with ROI calculators and business cases and raving fans and customer testimonials. And the customer will look them in the eye and agree, yep, you are really valuable, but we've decided to go in a different direction. I mean, how many times you've heard that one's painful, right? But it's like, and what happens is you've assumed that that buying group is confident that they all agree on what they're trying to do and so therefore my value should be clear. We think that our value is going to generate customer confidence. But in fact, I think what value really does is it demonstrates customer confidence. It demonstrates their alignment across objectives and tactics and metrics and targets and timelines. And unless
So
they're
let's
aligned,
unpack that.
yeah,
Let's
yeah,
unpack, if
absolutely.
I could,
Because it's a
let's
lot.
unpack
Yeah,
let's unpack the how of that.
yeah,
And I'll tell you, let's bifurcate that into two
sure.
parts.
Yeah,
If you have multiple people you're dealing with,
mm-hmm.
and they have to be aligned in what value they're looking for, first of all, how do you even elicit from them, since you're dealing with multiple players,
Yeah.
what they're seeking, and then how do you see if it matches your potential solution? Let's deal with the first part.
Yeah, it's a great question. Let me do this real quick. Just I just want to put it on just so it's floating there on the table, just so we can finish off the last thought. Which remember we talked about 4 challenges. The last one being outcome uncertainty. So let's just we've just
Okay,
put a name to it, and we can put it over there. Now let's
right.
dig into the third of the four, which is the idea of objective misalignment. So all four of these challenges have what we believe, my co-author Carl Schmidt and I believe very strongly, is a solution, which is there's a way to engage customers specifically designed to help them feel more confident again in themselves, not just in you. And specifically around this third challenge, it's how do I engage customers in such a way that they feel confident that they're aligned with each other around what they're trying to do in the first place, such that when I show them my value, they all agree, not only do I see that value, but that's the value we need because we all agree on the problem we're trying to solve. And this the approach that we're proposing here, the name of the book is The Framemaking Sale. And the frame making sale is this idea that we can provide a role, or we can play a role in sales of what we call frame making, which is taking things that are big and hard and overwhelming and just not telling you what to do, not showing up as the expert. You know, Paul, I've been doing this for 30 years and here's what you need to do. We have a huge amount of data that shows that it's a really bad idea. And as an
I
NLP
agree.
guy, you totally get why that's a bad idea, right? But rather to show up and say, I love the phrase in working with other customers like you. That's one of those like really tactical tips that your listeners hopefully can take with you. I've used this phrase my whole career. In working with other customers like you, by the way, it's all about social proof, right? Connecting them to other people like them. And
Right.
so there's a lot going on in that single phrase. But in working with other customers like you, we found that while there may be some pretty strong excitement about our value and all the ways we could help you, we have found kind of the hard way with certain customers that if they're not aligned on what they're trying to do in the first place, then ultimately the value that you and I see in this solution could actually wind up being a source of frustration rather than excitement because your colleagues won't agree not on our value, but rather what to do. So what we'd suggest is what we've learned is probably having a meeting, which we'd love to attend if you'd like us to be there and help facilitate, but where we need to kind of go through and think about what is the main problem we're trying to solve. This becomes what we call a stakeholder alignment workshop. And we've seen stakeholder alignment workshops run, a day and a half, 2 days. There's one company, they do billion-dollar deals with the companies like McDonald's. So their stakeholder alignment workshops are literally like a week long. But we've seen, smaller scale, an hour on Zoom. But it's like, let's get those stakeholders, the ones that matter most, together in a room, virtually in person, and just have a conversation, not about how great we are or the value that we create, but just almost agnostic of us. It's not a supplier-centric or customer-centric conversation. It's a supplier-agnostic conversation.
I love it. I
Yeah,
love
and just facilitate. So my role now is not a seller. My role becomes more of a facilitator. It's someone once said to me in a meeting I was doing in Chicago as a head of sales, said, Brendan, sounds like you want us to be like the psychologist of our customers. And it's like, well, you're not completely wrong. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's this opportunity to help your customers understand and overcome their own internal if not dysfunction, then at least disconnect, and make sure that they're agreed. And by the way, if in having that, if they say, no, we don't need that meeting, it's a waste of our time, well, that tells you probably want to go hunting somewhere else, because if you can't get them aligned,
Yeah.
or they're not aligned already,
Yeah.
it's bad. Or if you have the meeting and it turns out, yeah, well, they're a disaster. It's like, well, they can't align on like what to eat for
Yeah.
lunch. Then
And
again, that
and
becomes
now I have a
a
pushback
qualification.
question.
Yeah, yeah. Please go ahead.
Brent, I have a
Yeah,
pushback. So let's say you have this strategic alignment session, whatever you call, I
yeah,
forget the exact term you
yeah,
use. How do we know you're going to have people in that virtual room,
yeah,
and they're going to have different power positions in the
yeah,
decision-making hierarchy and in the company?
yeah,
And so how do you create an atmosphere and an environment where someone who's in a lower rung of the totem pole, but still has to be part of the decision-making process, feels free to actually speak up and say what they really need to say without being fearful that the top dog is going to smash them after the meeting? In other words, how do you generate an environment where people feel safe to express and ask their genuine questions? Because hierarchy, as opposed to business to customer, which is much simpler, you don't really
right.
have to worry about a hierarchy. There's hierarchy in any kind of company of any size and in
Yeah.
the decision-making process. So what do you do? What are some tips, tricks, I hate the word hack. Blah.
The
It's so overused.
so a couple thoughts, Paul. So I'll get to something very tactical in a second. So let me start with the high level and work my way down to tactical.
Perfect.
At a high level, the first thing we find that we need to embrace. So in the book we talk about this a lot, which is the starting point of this idea of frame making isn't a skill set, it's actually a mindset. So you have to kind of put yourself in the framework of, my role is to facilitate connection, as opposed to go teach them something or tell them something or sell them something. And once you do, then the skills that you already have just get sort of repositioned, right? And so one of the skills that we talk about a lot is within facilitation is this idea of the use of social proof and connecting. So as you see, you're again a neurolinguistic programming guy. I'm a trained linguist. My PhD is in linguistics, as I mentioned, although I'm not an NLP guy. But what that means is, like you perhaps, I geek out on language and the very specific uses of
Very
language, and
much.
how they can be very influential, sometimes manipulative if you want to get dark about it, but certainly very
That's fine.
powerful, right? Right. So imagine for that person. So I can use things like social proof. If there's a person, so one, I want to suss that out in advance to the degree that I can. If I've got a champion, a mobilizer, someone that's helping me organize this meeting, I want to say, now tell me a little about who's going to be there. Can you give me a sense for the dynamics in the room? Is there anything I need to be aware of, either personally or hierarchically? Is there questions I
So
should or
if I
shouldn't
could,
ask?
Brent, you're an
Yeah,
investigator more than you're an influencer.
yeah, I think that's right.
Investigating.
I think that's right. And then for me personally, at least, Paul, what I would do is a skill that I developed from years and years and years in the classroom. When I've got that one student that's sitting quietly in the corner, and I don't know if they're like tuned out or tuned in, if they're paying attention or not, I would do it. I call them. I cold call them, essentially, right? But you can do that with grace. You can do that in a way that is not accusatory. So imagine if there's a person who might be a little bit more junior. I'm a little worried about them not talking or saying something out loud, but maybe I believe that needs to be said. I might give them a backstop by using other people like them. So I might say something like, I don't know, maybe it's Susan. So Susan, Susan, you've been kind of quiet over. I'd love to get your thoughts, because from your role, it's so important. Your role. So I've given her value. Your role is so important, and it is. By the way, when you say these things, I would imagine you believe too. You got to mean these things. You can't just say them cynically, right? But like, Susan, your role is so important here, and I found in working with other companies. For individuals in your role, oftentimes the question that doesn't get asked that needs to be is this. Um, any thoughts on that? Do you any thoughts on sort of your perspective of where that might fit into this whole conversation? And what I'm trying to do is give her a little bit of air cover, and saying it's not her opinion, but the opinions of other companies. It's not her personally, but her role.
Yeah.
And it won't.
It's brilliant.
It's not a guarantee, but I'm trying to give her as much air cover as I
Brilliant.
can.
It's
That's
brilliant.
what I'm doing. Yeah.
Brent, it's genius. It's one of the things, it's one of the things I use in conflict resolution. If
Yeah.
someone, and I teach it, I'll say, look, this is not aimed at you as a person. It's addressed to you in your role as X. I've done
Right.
that in every sort of context and situation, and it calms things down. They go from confrontational to cooperative very, very quickly. And so
Yeah.
I like to see the parallel between
Yeah.
what you're doing in the B2B world and what I'm doing on a personal level and
Yeah,
B2C. And I think what you're doing, rather than being a thought leader, you're opening up the space. I hate that word. It's so new agey. You're creating the context where they can be sort of the thought leaders, and
agreed. Yeah.
you're
In
flipping
fact,
the
yeah.
script entirely.
100%. Exactly. That's this idea of frame making. This is the metaphor is if I can create a boundary, like almost like a play space is where it's a horrible metaphor, maybe, right? But I'm creating a safe space. And it's like, let's explore this problem. So, here's its scope. It probably is not beyond this if it's not beyond this, but inside that, what I'm trying to do, if I'm trying to help customers feel more confident in themselves, then they got to believe that they're in control, that they have agency. And I think it becomes really, really important to think about how do we sell in such a way that we not only preserve, but we promote our customer sense of agency. Because when I show up and say, I've been doing this for 30 years, here's what I think you should do, I'm robbing you of agency. And if I'm solving for your confidence in you, that's a horrible way to sell. And so that's some of these techniques are going to get really subtle, Paul. And I'm a little concerned about my ability to go out in the world
No,
and help
no, I'll
sellers
help you
do this
unpack
stuff.
them. No,
Yeah.
you're doing a fabulous job. Stop that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But it's hard. I mean, I just want to acknowledge right up front, these things are subtle, right? They are, and they can be a little hard. And I think there's certain people, whether they're sellers or just human beings, maybe it's got a little bit more empathy, maybe they're just more used to this, are just going to naturally gravitate this and do this well. For others, it's going to feel very foreign,
That's
but it's
great.
very
That's
powerful.
great. The more foreign it is, the more the potential it holds to bring in results they're not used to enjoying.
Yeah,
So good. Bring it
yeah.
on, man.
I love it. So anyway, so that's the so what are the four forces? I think we hit those. And then your question about let's dig into the third of the four, which is how do I help customers align with each other? There's a few thoughts on that. So there you go.
Yeah, go.
No, no, that's it. So that'd be I'm happy to go further and we can go to a couple different directions, but that that to me is, by the way, so make it a little bit, let's do one that's maybe a little easier. This whole idea of decision complexity, right? It was one of the four challenges of really undermining customer
And,
value.
and before you go there, I
Yeah.
want to hear you. And some
Yeah.
decisions are complex. There's no denying it, and there's no
100%.
100%. So I want you to address decision complexity, but especially in those cases where the decision is it's complex.
Yeah. And they are not only by definition but by design, right? So one of the last chapter of the book, chapter 10, as it's a very brief history lesson of B2B sales over the last 30 years in it, and I won't do the whole lesson for you right now, I promise. But there was nonetheless this really interesting shift in the early 2000s towards something called solution selling, right? So we're going to move from selling individual products to broader solutions designed to help customers meet their broader needs, where we're going to integrate IT and we're going to integrate HR and we're going to put all
Yeah.
these things together, right? And the reason you do that, of course, is to differentiate yourself from the competition to demand higher margins. There's all sorts of really important and good reasons to do that strategically. Um, However, as a footnote, solution just like products have become commoditized, so have solutions. But we'll park that. We can
Correct.
come back to that if you want. But
Correct.
nonetheless, right? But that if you think of like why are there so many bleeping people involved in a B2B purchase day, it's partly because you've purposefully designed solutions to differentiate yourself that include more people in the customer organization. It's like you're saying, look how we can help this person and that team and integrate with this solution, and that's going to tie to this thing. But and now, right? And now we've got
Pause
yeah, yeah.
button. This
Go
is
ahead. Yeah,
gold. This
yeah,
is gold. So in order to make yourself stand out and make sure you're not a commodity, you're
yeah,
offering such a complex suite of solutions, you're overcomplicating their ability to make a good decision. In the effort to provide a superior product, and maybe yours is a superior
yeah,
solution, and to position yourself, you're actually making it harder for the people who are making the decision to make that decision, correct?
yeah. Correct. But I would add necessarily, right? Because there is another option, which is, well, then let's just simplify our product, make it bare bones, simple, easy to buy for a single person. There is that strategy. And that's actually been a very popular strategy out of Silicon Valley for the last 3 to 4 years called product-led growth, right? PLG is this idea of I'm going to sell a very simple product. I'm going to put it on a website. I don't even have to have a sales team. You swipe your credit card, it sells itself. What happens in a PLG motion is at some point your deals get bigger and bigger and bigger. And now you sell not just to one person at a company, but 10 people, now to 50 people. And all of a sudden you start saying, at some point you wake up and say, I want to go enterprise. enterprise, right? And so now you try to sell enterprise deals, and all of a sudden you're right back into the frying pan that you tried to escape through product-led growth by selling enterprise deals of individual products, which you go right back into this complex purchase. So it's almost unavoidable. And I'm not suggesting like a bunch of idiots, strategists made these complex solutions and effed everything up. It's rather, no, that was a smart decision, but it's got some consequences. And one of the consequences that we've got to handle now is the fact that these complex solutions require complex decisions inside the customer organization with lots of different people who want to say. And oftentimes they don't know how to do that. They don't know how to, like, so have you talked to someone in IT about this? Have you talked to your CISO? A CISO, what's a CISO? I can't tell you how many heads of sales I've talked to where deals have gone wrong because a customer missed a step that they didn't even know existed as a step in the purchase process, right? So there's a story in the book where we talk about, I often joke, most of my stories are true, and this one is, but there's a story as a head of sales that told me once, like they lost a deal at the last minute of, like a $15 million deal was going to make or break the quarter. And they lost it at the last minute because it turns out the deal had to go to the customer's capital review board because it was such a large deal. And the funny thing about the story is the customer didn't even know their company had a capital review board.
Bad research. Bad
Right?
research. Better than it wasn't bad influence or bad position. It's just bad fucking research.
Perhaps, but the lesson of the story is I've always gotten a kick out of the story because this has happened real time. It's another one of these meetings in Chicago where the head of sales was telling the stories, but he was looking around the room. All the heads of sales were like kind of doing where he was like, "Oh, you missed that one, didn't you?" It's like, "Oh," but the head of sales, he was a very authentic guy. He looked around and says, "You know what we do on every deal now going forward?" And everyone goes, "What's that?" And he says, the first question we ask is, "Do you have a capital review board?" Right. And but notice, but therein in that sort of funny story, therein lies the opportunity. Therein lies the answer, this idea of frame making, which is, what if I take this thing that's big and hard and complex, which is we call it the spaghetti bowl of B2B buying, this big map of all that circles and arrows and lines and paragraphs of trying to navigate the customer's buying journey is not a freaking straight line. It is a mess, right? So what if I were to help take that and just make it feel more manageable? What if I were to sort of take you figuratively by the hand, because literally it would be weird, and I would guide you like a coach or a Sherpa through that process and kind of lay out, here are the people you need to talk to. Here's when you want to bring them in. Here are the questions they're likely to have. Here's the best way to handle them. Here's the PowerPoint deck you need to have that conversation. So I'm not telling you what to do per se, but I am guiding, coaching. I'm putting a framework around this so that you feel like you're still in control of the deal, but you're not going it alone, and you've got better help and support to navigate this. And I think in sales traditionally, we're like, well, that's the customer's problem. It's not my problem. It's like, but if they can't figure it out, it becomes your problem because they're not going to buy, not because they hate your product. They're not going to buy because they're just overwhelmed, frustrated, and just exhausted.
Wow. Mother of freaking God, you're really good. I want to ask a different question.
I gotta hold on. Let me give you a real quick story because see if this resonates with you. This guy, okay. Do you shop on Amazon? You're a human being. You probably shop on Amazon.
Of course.
I
order so much useless stuff for my cats that they never play with these toys. They always look good, but they never play with them. And I never am bothered. The price point is so low. I'm so busy. I can't be bothered to return them.
All right, there's two kinds of people in the world, according to people like Daniel Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize for this. There's what are called satisficers and maximizers. I'm a maximizer. My wife is a maximum maximizer. But so either like 20% of the people I tell the story to have no idea what I'm talking about. The other 80% is like, oh my God, it's like, how did you know? But when you go on Amazon and you're trying to buy something relatively simple, I don't know, like, a cat toy or, a dongle for your laptop or something like that. So you put it in the search window, you say, I don't know, 6-inch dongle, USB to USB-C, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And Amazon comes back and says, no problem. Here's 1,500 options. And you're like, whoa, that's, it's like, I don't even know where to start. So, but Amazon says, that's okay. I'll tell you where to start. Here's Amazon's choice. And here's Amazon's top picks. So you think, okay, no problem. I'll start there. You look at it, it's okay, great. This should take 30 seconds. You look it over. It's cool. Let me look at the reviews. 4.8 stars. Great. And then all of a sudden you say, well, let me just, before I hit go on this, let me just check out a couple of these 1-star reviews just real quick. And then you look at the 1-star reviews, like broken 2 minutes, never showed up. You're like, whoa.
Yeah.
And you kind of freak out and you think, oh my God, I can't buy this. It's a waste of my time. It's like, let me just look at one more. Then you said this one's got 4.78 stars. It's almost the same. And all of a sudden, 3 hours later, Paul, you're still freaking on Amazon trying to buy a $6 dongle, and you're kind of hating your life because you just can't bleep and make a decision because it's so overwhelming. And that's where I often joke, but it's true. Amazon's got your back because they say, look, I can make this pain stop for you. It's no problem. Here's a button, and the button says save for later. And if I press the save for later button, the pain stops. The decision goes away. And I could just quote unquote come back to some other time.
We are past time, but I don't care. I want to go a little longer with you and ask you a question you've not been used to being
Okay,
asked.
hold on. I got to tell you the punchline of the story because this is true. My wife has 582 items saved for later on Amazon.
Great.
See, and that's what B2B buying looks like today. That's what B2C buying looks like today. When you're so overwhelmed, you just choose not to choose. You say, I'll come back to it, and then you never do. How much more commerce could be happening in our world, Paul, if we weren't all just so overwhelmed by trying to make these decisions?
I agree.
That's interesting to me. Sorry, go ahead. You want to? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because we are over time, but I don't care. You're fascinating. I want to ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you think you could have come up with all of this had you not been a linguist?
Yes, I do. But I think they both ladder up to the same thing. So it's not like this, then linguist, then this. It's rather this linguist, then there's something up here. And the thing that's up here is just my brain is wired in a different way, I think, than some. For better, for worse, it's good days and bad days. Now we're getting into, you've done work shows on neuroplasticity and other things like that, which are super interesting. I don't know if you've done a lot of neurodivergence. That's a whole nother show. I won't touch that. But what I would say though is I have a pretty good skill or instinct. I'm not sure what it is, whether it's nature or nurture, for lateral thinking. I thrive on making connections. And I've heard you talk about contrarianism on some of your other episodes, and I'm a deeply contrarian. You're going to love this joke, but I think it's hilarious, which is if I'm such a contrarian that if you tell me to zig, I will do neither. You get it? That's pretty good. Come on now. I love that joke. I made it up all by myself. But so, it's I just love asking hard questions and finding different, yes. Okay. You're hitting the pause button while you drink. I will drink too.
No,
here's
no pause button. We don't edit on this fucking show. We don't edit. We don't do anything. I need to let you go, Brent. But before I do, my audience needs to stay in the conversation with you. How are they going to do that? What's the best way to do that?
The best way to find me personally is on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time there hanging out, wasting my time. The company my co-author and I have created a company to support the book. It's called A to B Insight. It's the letter A and then TO, the letter B, A. So if I'm moving from A to B, there's a story behind that, but A to B Insight.com. You can find us there. The book is called The Framemaking Sale. The Framemaking Sale. The Framemaking Sale will be available in bookstores near you September 9. We've got a few months to wait, but we'll be on LinkedIn talking about it on a pretty regular basis until then.
You've been a fantastic guest. I really enjoyed this because it so expands and really opens my mind. This is something I teach in both of my books on sales is the customer doesn't trust their own ability to make a great decision. Thank you so much. Stay in the green room with me. Fantastic episode. Thank you, Brent, for being an amazing guest. We'll see you next time. And again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for making a show in the top 10% globally. It's amazing. How I did that, I don't know. Thanks, everybody.
The Influencer's Edge is brought to you by the Rapid Sales Accelerator. If you're ready to skyrocket your sales by 30% or more in just 90 days, then you need to claim your free training right now. You'll learn 4 words that will compel your prospects to trust you like they were children within the first 3 to 5 minutes of any conversation across any platform and any medium. You'll learn how to give your prospects objection amnesia, to crush objections like I need to talk to my spouse, or I need more time to think it over, or it's too expensive. If you'd like to claim your free training now, go to www.paulrossbook.com. Do it before your competition does it now. Thank you for tuning in to the Influencer's Edge, where you get the latest breakthroughs, cutting-edge insights, tools, and techniques so you can leapfrog over the pack at sales, influence, and persuasion. Remember to visit our website at www.theinfluencersedge.com to enjoy even more great episodes like this one. We look forward to seeing you again on the Influencer's Edge Show.